Let's talk about the basics of SQL injection here. So understanding how SQL injection works and what you're actually doing is useful. You can't just plug in any old SQL statement here and expect it to work. So something like that's just not going to work, more than likely. What you need to do is you need to understand how the query is actually structured and how you may be able to break out of the query that's there. So for example, in this case, I could do select asterisk from users where username equals, and let's say we're using something like PHP, and I would do something like this. And actually I'd put these into quotes. So this is sort of what we're dealing with. Now, what I input is actually what's going to go in here. So what I need to do in order to break out of this is I need to close the quote, and depending on the server that's on the back end, I may actually need to terminate the query itself with something like a semicolon. So the first thing that you may want to try doing is just closing the quote and seeing if we can do something like that. Now, since you're doing a select statement, and a select statement goes through the database and it chooses all of the rows that match the particular query. So what I want to do is structure a query so that I can get as much from the database as I can. In the case of this, for example, that's what I really want to do, is I want to get a lot of values back, or at least one value back that's going to indicate that probably I have passed the authentication. So what I could do is the classic where 1 equals 1. So I could run this as a SQL injection, for example. Actually, let me get all of the spaces out of this, so we're not dealing with any problems with spaces. So I could run that and just see whether I can log in doing that or not. And in that case, it didn't work. So maybe I need to terminate the query ahead of it before doing something. And in this case, I know it's not going to work because I'm doing an or here and I've actually put a semicolon in, but this is something that you might do. So understanding the context of what you're doing is really helpful for being able to do SQL injection attacks. So what's your goal? In this case, my goal is to actually return some rows in case the application is just seeing whether it got something back. So I may want to do just something where I'm going to get any sort of value back. So I could do something like or user equal admin, hoping that there is an admin user as an example. So I could do something like that for a username password where I'm attempting to log in. Now, other things, I may be able to actually dump data from the database. So I could do something like terminating the original query and then doing something like this. Select asterisks from users, which hopefully will give me all of the user information. Or I could do something like, in the case of my SQL, I could do describe table and then give it a table name. So there's a lot of different things I can do with SQL injection, but the important thing is understanding the context of the form that you're dealing with and the type of query that's probably there. Now, if you were to do something that could generate an error, you may actually be able to get the query back. So sometimes if the developer's not paying attention, they're not parsing the error messages out, they're just printing them out to the screen, you may be able to get the error message back from the web server indicating what the query was, so you can do a better job of structuring your SQL injection to break out of that query and see what other data that you can get.